Central Poland, 2008. Imagine this. You just finished a long, exhausting shift at work. You walk out into the cold, tired, and stressed about money before your paycheck even hits your account. You get into the tram to go home. Everything is normal. Everything is quiet. The tram moves through the city, taking you home, just like every day. When suddenly, it snaps to the left and slams straight into another tram at full speed. Metal crunches. Windows shatter. Emergency sirens fill the streets as medics race the clock to take you to a hospital, and police rush in, thinking a dangerous group just attacked the city center. But there was no group, no terror attack, no system malfunction. It was all just a 14-year-old kid standing in the dark, clicking a TV remote. To his teachers and parents, he was just a normal, quiet, smart student, a normal kid. But outside of school, he lived a second life, driven by a deep obsession with the city's tram network. He didn't just ride the trams, he memorized every route, studied the track layouts, and spent his free time hanging around train yards. He knew the system better than almost anyone, and while studying those tracks, he noticed a massive design flaw. The track switches on street poles were not protected by encrypted computers or secure passwords. Instead, when a driver needed to change tracks, the tram sent a basic infrared signal to a receiver on a pole. It was simple, unencrypted, and it used the exact same infrared technology found in ordinary household electronics. The teenager realized something crazy. If he could copy that signal, he could control the tracks himself. So he took an ordinary television remote, opened it up, and modified the internal circuit board to turn it into an infrared transmitter. He walked around the city with a school notebook, standing near track junctions, testing different signals until he mapped out the exact frequencies for every switch in Łódź city. At first, he started small. He stood on sidewalks near empty track junctions, pointed his remote, and watched the heavy steel track switches move on their own. It worked. Soon after, tram drivers across Łódź started running into strange problems. Drivers expecting to go straight suddenly found themselves routed down the wrong streets or into service depots because the empty switches had been flipped ahead of time. At first, transit staff thought it was just a mechanical malfunction or an electrical glitch caused by the aging winter infrastructure. Drivers had to stop, step out, and manually force the tracks back into place, causing a serious traffic jam across Łódź city. Confident that no one suspected a thing, the 14-year-old kid took a very dangerous step forward. He stopped just flipping into tracks. He began positioning himself at busy intersections and during peak hours, watching trams packed with people approach the switches. And instead of waiting for a tram to pass through safely, he began clicking his remote while vehicles were actively driving across the junction. Standing in the shadows of a major intersection, he watched tram number 14 approach the junction. It was packed with commuters. Inside the cab, the driver checked his line. All clear. He accelerated straight ahead. The front wheels rolled over the steel switch smoothly. And then From the sidewalk, a finger pressed a plastic button on a TV remote. An invisible infrared beam flashed across the street, and underneath the moving tram, the steel track point slammed shut. The front of the tram was moving straight at 20 miles an hour, but the back wheels were instantly forced left. Inside the carriage, passengers were thrown off their feet as the rear wagon was violently whipped sideways across the street, tearing out of its steel grooves. Before the driver could even hit the emergency brake, the drifting rear end swung directly into the oncoming traffic, slamming side first into a passing tram. The impact tore through glass and steel. Screams echoed down the street as 12 passengers were left bloody and seriously injured in the wreckage. The city was no longer dealing with an aging transit network. They were facing an active, invisible attacker. And for the first time, city authorities called in the police. Following the disaster, the city of Łódź was in full crisis mode. MPK Łódź transit engineers swept the tracks with investigators led by Łódź police spokesman Mirosław Mitzer. Investigators analyzed the crash site and checked every physical component. There was no mechanical failure on the tram, no broken axle, no snapped track line. Instead, inspectors noticed something unsettling. The electronic switch on the overhead pole had been triggered externally, right as the rear wagon crossed. Mirosław Mitzer and his team realized that this was not an equipment glitch. Someone was standing near these intersections, manually overriding the city's transit grid from the street. Police began monitoring high-traffic junctions, watching the crowds near tracks whenever a signal anomaly occurred. It didn't take a long time for witnesses and transit security to report a quiet kid who was frequently seen standing near the switch poles right before tracks mysteriously flipped. Officers tracked him back to his home and executed a search warrant on his bedroom. What they found inside shocked the entire police department. There was no military weapons or complex supercomputers. Instead, on his desk, police recovered the modified television remote control, its casing tampered with and customized to broadcast short-range infrared signals. Right beside the remote lay a school exercise notebook. Inside it, the 14-year-old kid had meticulously mapped out the entire Łódź tram network, page after page filled with the handwritten signal frequencies, junction locations, track diagrams, and step-by-step notes on how to manipulate switches across the city. Interrogated by police alongside a child psychologist, it was clear that the teenager was never trying to harm anyone or commit any crime. Both police spokesman Mirosław Mitzer and the psychologist concluded that the boy operated with any ill intent, treating the city's network like an interactive game and failing to realize his actions carried real-world consequences. Mitzer later told reporters,
"He studied the trams and tracks for a long time. He treated it like any other schoolboy might treat a giant train set. But he was lucky that nobody was killed."
Because he was only 14-year-old, Polish juvenile privacy laws protected his identity. He was brought before a special juvenile court charged with endangering public safety and property destruction. Rather than prison, the court placed him under strict probation, psychological supervision, and mandatory counseling. It was a wake-up call for modern infrastructure worldwide. A 14-year-old boy had single-handedly brought a European city's transit system to its knees, not with a high-tech cyber weapon, but with a modified TV remote. and a school notebook.
This world was built from nothing. No budget, no crew, just me. If you're still watching, you're already part of the narrative. Subscribe to keep the feed alive.